Alright, welcome back for another lesson. This is lesson 40, page 98 and 99 in the Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course, all-in-one, level 1. So, today we are talking about half steps and whole steps. Now, if you remember, we talked about seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, octaves. That's how we measure distance. But there's another way we measure distance, and it's called half steps and whole steps. So on the piano, we've dealt with measuring the distance on the white notes, but this new way, half steps and whole steps, doesn't matter where you start. It's simply measuring up or down by every continual note. So from this note here, it is a white note. It is a half step to go to the very next note up, but it is also a half step to go to the very next note down. So you'll notice that these are two white notes, and this is a white and a black note, and that is the same distance, half step. Now it's a half step from this black one to this white one. It's another half step from this white one to this black one. And this is a half step, and that's a half step, half step, half step. That's it. From every, this is called the chromatic scale when you play every single note. And those are all half steps. It's the same distance from one of the notes to the very next note up or down. This is called equal temperament. We aren't going to get into that, but it's saying that the distance from this note to this note and the distance from this note to this note is the same. So just like a half dollar, two half dollars make a whole dollar, two half steps make a whole step. So from this one, up one half step, up a second half step. So from C to D, it's called a whole step. From D, up a half step to E flat or D sharp, up a half step to E. So D to E is two half steps or one whole step. From E to F, that's a half step. So this is not a whole step, and this is where it's important that you're very clear about this. The very next note up or down isn't always going to be the same color. So here we have a half step, whole step, because there's a note in between. But you can also have a whole step from white to black or black to white. So from E, it's a half step to F, a second half step to F sharp or G flat. But technically F sharp, we're going to call it a whole step. So that is half steps and whole steps in a nutshell. So just to give you some examples though, from G flat to G to A flat, that's two half steps. Half step from G flat to G and a half step from G to A flat. So this is a whole step. That's a whole step because there's one note between them. That's a whole step. There's one note between them. That's a half step because there's no note between them. But if you look at the piano, there is no black note to black note half step because all of the black notes are separated by a white note. But there are two instances of white note to white notes being half steps. B and C, E and F. The rest of these, C to D, that's a whole step because there's a note between. D to E, that's a whole step, there's a note between. F to G, that's a whole step. G to A, that's a whole step. A to B, that's a whole step. So all of these half steps and whole steps just need to be committed to memory. Now, look at the bottom of 98. It says a tetrachord is a series of four notes having the pattern of whole step, half step. And we measured that from the note we start on. So the book starts on C. So we can't say C is a whole step because C is just C. But from C, it is a whole step up to D. It is a whole step from D up to E. And it is a half step from E up to F. So these four notes make up what they call a tetrachord. Whole, whole, half. You have to just memorize that. From C, it's up a whole step, up a whole step, up a half step. You can do this tetrachord starting on any note you want, but you have to follow whole, whole, half. So let's start on G. From G, up a whole step, half step, that's a whole step, to A, that's a half step, whole step, to B, then a half step, to C. So if you start on G, that's up a whole step to A, up a whole step to B, up a half step to C. So this pattern is just a pattern that you apply from the note you start on. You can't start on the C and call that a whole step, like I said. So it has to be, the whole step is the measure of distance up or down from that note. So if you look at page 99, it's writing half steps and whole steps, and you have to tell which one each one is. So if you look at the exercise, I will give all the answers. You should pause this and work through it, and then when you unpause, I will magically tell you everything. So exercise 1. In the following squares, write half for each half step and 1 for each whole step, indicated by the arrows. The first one is a whole step. Second one is a half step. Third one is a whole step. Fourth one is a whole step. Fifth one is a half step. Sixth one is a half step. Seventh one is a half step. Eighth one is a whole step. And the ninth one is a whole step. The second line. The first one is a half step, then a whole step, then a whole step, then a whole step. Fifth one is a whole step. Sixth is a half step. Next is a half step, followed by a whole step, followed by a half step, and it finishes with a whole step. So again, I'll give all the answers starting at the beginning. It's whole, half, 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 whole, whole. Second line, half, whole, half, whole, half, whole. Tetrachords, exercise 2 on the bottom of page 99. Study the tetrachords below and answer these questions. Does each consist of a whole step, half step? Are the notes of each tetrachord neighboring letters of the musical alphabet? That's important. The notes, it says on the bottom of 98, the notes of the tetrachord must be in alphabetical order. So they don't skip any notes. So going along, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right. So when you have your tetrachord, the notes have to follow that exact order. They don't skip any notes for a tetrachord. And then underline the correct spelling of the D tetrachord, and you have 2 options. So let's look at them, and I'll give you the answers. So it says, does each consist of a whole step, half step? Well, let's look. The first one, G, A, B, C. Well, from G, it's a whole step to A, it's a whole step to B, and a half step to C. Whole, half. That one does follow the tetrachord whole, half pattern. The second example is D, E, F sharp, G. Well, from D, it's a whole step to E, a whole step to F sharp, and a half step to G. So that one also follows the whole, half pattern. So the answer is yes. Both examples consist of whole, half following the tetrachord pattern. Are the notes of each tetrachord neighboring letters of the musical alphabet? Well, G, A, B, C. Yeah, They don't skip any notes. It's all consecutive. D, E, F sharp, G. Yes, D, E, F, G. We have to say sharp, but the letter names follow the pattern. D, E, F sharp, G. So, are the notes of each tetrachord neighboring letters of the musical alphabet? Yes. Third one, underline the correct spelling of the D tetrachord. Now, this is where the spelling or the letter names that you give the notes are very important. You have D, E, this black note, and G. Now, if we would have called this G flat, you would have D, E, G flat, G. You would have no F, therefore skipping a note labeled with an F, and that would not be the correct spelling of a tetrachord. Remember, you have to use the notes in alphabetical order. So the correct spelling would be some kind of D, some kind of E, some kind of F, some kind of G. I say it that way because if you had a D flat first, it would be a half step to E flat, or a whole step to E flat, sorry. D flat to E flat is a whole step. E flat to F is a whole step. F to F sharp is a half step. But following the tetrachord pattern, you have to have the letters go in order. So we couldn't call this last one F sharp if we have D flat, E flat, F already. This would have to be called G flat. Remember, flats lower a note like a flat tire, and sharps raise a note. So the correct spelling is D, E, F sharp, G, not D, E, G flat, G. It's very important that you're clear on that. All right, well, that is lesson 40, covering half steps and whole steps. Go at your piano, practice this. Whole step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half 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 step, whole 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 step, half 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 step. Just get used to being able to play those and know which ones you're playing. All right, we'll take a look. Here is page 98 and page 99. Any questions, let me know.